For 15 years, Claire and I were the couple everyone envied. At least, that's how it seemed. We had the kind of marriage people wrote greeting cards about, steady, affectionate, and built on trust. Or so I thought. I'd watch her at parties, her laughter lighting up the room, and feel a quiet pride that she was mine. We worked like a well-oiled machine. I handled the blueprints of life, and she added the finishing touches that made it beautiful. Claire was magnetic, effortlessly charming everyone she met. She could convince a stranger to share their life story within minutes. Her warmth disarming even the hardest hearts. I built houses, but she built connections. Together, we seemed unstoppable. A power couple hosting elegant dinner parties and taking vacations that filled our photo albums with perfection. But it's funny how a single email can shatter the illusion of perfection. One careless mistake, and the polished surface of our marriage cracked, exposing a truth I never saw coming. From the moment Claire's misdirected email landed in my inbox, I felt my world shift. It wasn't just the words about yesterday that unsettled me, but the tone. The email was warm, intimate, and far too familiar to have been meant for me. As I read it over and over, searching for some misunderstanding or innocent context, a pit formed in my stomach. I replayed the details of our ordinary Wednesday. Claire working late, me at the office, and a quiet dinner at home. Nothing about the day suggested a reason for her words. Who was yesterday meant for? I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Her easy smile and casual demeanor when she walked through the door didn't match the woman who had written that email. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, some harmless misstep, but doubt whispered otherwise. For the first time in 15 years, I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. In the days that followed, I watched her more closely than I ever had before. Every small change in her behavior became a potential clue. She seemed distracted at times, her phone always within reach, her laughter more private when a message came through. Yet, she was affectionate, too much so, as if trying to overcompensate for something I wasn't supposed to notice. I tried to rationalize her actions. Work stress, a fight with a friend. Perhaps I was being paranoid. But as the days turned into a week, my unease grew into something heavier. I knew I couldn't handle the uncertainty alone. That's when I contacted Layla Grant, a private investigator whose name I had heard in quiet, confidential circles. Explaining my suspicions felt surreal, like speaking about someone else's life. Layla listened without judgment and promised to get to the truth. Even as I waited for Layla's first report, I clung to the hope that I was wrong. Maybe the email had been some misunderstanding. Maybe Claire would come to me and explain everything, her face lighting up with the warmth I'd known for years. But as each day passed, that hope became harder to hold on to. I wasn't just questioning Claire. I was questioning everything. Our marriage, our love, and my ability to trust the woman I had built a life with. The first report from Layla arrived on a Thursday afternoon. An unassuming manila envelope slipped discreetly into my hand. I waited until I was alone in my office before opening it, my heart pounding in anticipation and dread. Inside were photos, Claire with a man I didn't recognize, sitting across from each other at a small cafe. They weren't holding hands or locked in an embrace, but there was an undeniable intimacy in their body language, the way her head tilted toward him, the slight touch of his hand grazing hers. A second set of photos revealed them entering a boutique hotel on the other side of town, the kind of place designed for discretion. They didn't leave until hours later. I stared at the images, my emotions a volatile mix of heartbreak and anger. I flipped through them again, hoping to find something, anything, that would disprove what my gut already knew. But there was no escaping it. My wife was having an affair. Layla's detailed report confirmed her findings. The man in the photos was Victor Hayes, a successful entrepreneur who frequently worked with Claire on high-profile events. It made sense their paths would have naturally crossed, but this knowledge only deepened my sense of betrayal. Victor wasn't just some stranger. He was a part of the world we shared, someone who knew Claire as a professional and me as her husband. The sheer audacity of their affair, conducted so close to home, left me seething. But even in my anger, I didn't act rashly. My instincts told me that a confrontation now would lead to nothing but lies, excuses, and denials. I needed more than just the truth. I needed control. I resolved to let the affair continue for a little while longer, using the time to gather more evidence and plan my next steps. As I continued to observe Claire, I became acutely aware of the small deceptions that had become part of her daily life. There were the late-night phone calls she took in another room, the sudden client emergencies that pulled her away from home, and the unexplained absences on weekends. She was careful, but not careful enough. I could see through her excuses now, each one a thread unraveling the fabric of our life together. Through Layla, I learned that Claire and Victor had been meeting regularly for several months. Their affair wasn't just a fleeting indiscretion, it had roots, a rhythm. The boutique hotel wasn't the only rendezvous point. They frequented out-of-the-way restaurants, private parties, and, most damningly, a lake house Victor owned a few hours away. Every new revelation was a dagger to my heart, yet it also strengthened my resolve. I began to piece together a timeline, noting their patterns and preferences. Wednesdays were a favorite day for them, a midweek escape from their respective lives. Victor's emails to Claire, which I had Layla intercept, were sickeningly sweet, filled with promises and declarations of love. "You're the only thing that makes my life worth living," one read. Another proposed a weekend getaway at the lake house, a special retreat for just the two of us. Despite my growing anger, I stayed outwardly calm at home. I played the part of the devoted husband, listening to Claire's stories about work, laughing at her jokes, and even planning little surprises to keep her off guard. I wanted her to feel safe, to believe she was outsmarting me. My patience was rewarded one night when she left her phone unattended. A quick glance confirmed her next meeting with Victor, a Wednesday lunch at the cafe, followed by an afternoon at the hotel. Armed with this information, I decided it was time to test my influence. On the morning of their planned meeting, I sabotaged Claire's car, loosening a valve in her tire. When she discovered the flat, she called me in a panic. "I'm running late for an important meeting," she said, her voice filled with frustration. I played the role of the understanding husband, assuring her I'd come to her rescue. When I arrived, I worked methodically, taking my time to replace the tire while Claire fidgeted beside me. I made polite conversation, asking about her day and commenting on the weather, all while deliberately delaying her. By the time I finished, she was over an hour late for her rendezvous with Victor. As I drove away, I couldn't help but smile, imagining the disappointment on Victor's face as he waited in vain. Over the next few weeks, I continued my quiet campaign of disruption. I canceled their hotel reservations under Victor's name, sent anonymous messages to Victor's wife hinting at his infidelity, and even arranged for one of their romantic dinners to be interrupted by a fire alarm. Each act of sabotage drove a wedge deeper between them, creating tension and frustration. Their email exchanges, which I now monitored regularly, became increasingly strained. Victor complained about Claire's unreliability, while Claire lamented the growing complications in their affair. "Maybe this is a sign we should stop," she wrote in one message. But Victor, ever persistent, convinced her to give it one more try. As their relationship faltered, I doubled down on my efforts to win Claire back. I planned romantic evenings, cooked her favorite meals, and reminded her of the life we had built together. At times, she seemed genuinely moved, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and affection. But I knew this wasn't enough, not yet. To truly end her affair, I needed to push her and Victor to the breaking point. The cracks in Claire and Victor's relationship were growing deeper, but I knew I couldn't rely on their frustrations alone to end things. If I wanted to drive a final wedge between them, I needed to escalate my efforts carefully and strategically. My goal wasn't just to disrupt their plans, it was to make their affair so unbearable that it collapsed under its own weight. At the same time, I would position myself as the perfect husband, a stark contrast to the chaos their relationship was becoming. My first step was subtle. I sent an anonymous letter to Victor's wife, Camila. The letter wasn't explicit but included just enough detail to arouse suspicion, a description of Victor's favorite cafe, a suggestion that he often spent time there during business meetings, and a vague mention of a boutique hotel. I signed it as a concerned friend. Within days, I began seeing the results through the emails I intercepted. Victor mentioned tension at home, complaining that Camila was asking too many questions. "She's been unusually clingy," he wrote to Claire. "I think she suspects something." Claire, of course, responded with reassurance. "Don't worry," she wrote. "She has no proof, and we're careful." The stress was starting to show. Their next rendezvous was scheduled at the Hyatt Hotel, a more upscale location than their usual boutique haunt. I saw an opportunity to strike. On the morning of their meeting, I called the hotel, posing as Victor, and canceled the reservation. Then, I made my way to the hotel lobby, seating myself inconspicuously with a newspaper and a clear view of the reception desk. Victor and Claire arrived right on time, their faces lighting up with excitement until they were informed that their reservation had been canceled. I watched as Victor argued with the desk clerk, his frustration mounting. The hotel was fully booked due to a conference, leaving them with no alternative. Claire's face flushed with embarrassment and anger as she muttered something to Victor, who tried unsuccessfully to calm her. Moments later, they stormed out of the hotel, their plans for the day completely ruined. That evening, Claire returned home visibly agitated. I greeted her warmly, offering a glass of wine and a sympathetic ear, but she brushed me off, retreating to the bedroom. Later, I overheard her on the phone with Victor. "This is getting too complicated," she hissed. "I can't keep making excuses for why I'm late or missing." Victor, for his part, seemed more determined than ever, promising her that things would get easier, but I could hear the doubt creeping into Claire's voice. The following week, I took things a step further. I discovered that Victor had booked a private dining room at an exclusive restaurant for Claire's birthday. Using a burner phone, I called the restaurant an hour before their reservation, claiming to be a fire marshal and reporting a suspected gas leak. The restaurant evacuated just as Claire and Victor arrived. I imagined their faces as they stood outside, watching their romantic evening go up in smoke, literally. When Claire came home that night, she was visibly deflated. "Rough day?" I asked, setting her favorite tea on the table. She looked at me, her eyes tired, and sighed. "You have no idea." I didn't press her for details, knowing she wouldn't tell me the truth. Instead, I focused on being the attentive, loving husband she no longer deserved. While their relationship faltered, I ramped up my efforts to win Claire back. I surprised her with thoughtful gestures. Flowers delivered to her office, a handwritten note tucked into her briefcase, and even a surprise weekend getaway to a nearby spa. At first, she seemed wary of my sudden displays of affection, but over time, she began to respond. She smiled more, lingered longer at the dinner table, and even initiated a few romantic evenings of her own. I played my part perfectly, never hinting that I knew about her affair. To Claire, I was simply a husband rediscovering his love for her, reigniting the spark that had dimmed over the years. To me, every tender moment was a calculated move, designed to remind her of what she stood to lose. The turning point came when Victor proposed a weekend at his lake house. "Just the two of us," he wrote in an email. No interruptions this time. Claire hesitated, her reply unusually brief. Let me think about it. I saw my opportunity and made my move. I invited Claire's sister, Hannah, to visit us that same weekend, framing it as a thoughtful surprise for Claire. When Hannah arrived, Claire was visibly caught off guard, but quickly masked her discomfort. She couldn't very well leave for the weekend without arousing suspicion, and I knew she wouldn't dare try to explain her absence to Hannah. While Claire entertained her sister, I kept things light and cheerful, ensuring Claire had no opportunity to sneak away. On Sunday afternoon, as Hannah prepared to leave, she hugged me and whispered, "You're such a good husband. Claire's lucky to have you." Claire overheard and winced, her guilt written plainly on her face. By the end of the weekend, the strain was evident. Claire avoided Victor's calls and emails, her excuses growing weaker. Their next exchange was brief and final. "This isn't working anymore," she wrote. "I can't keep living like this." Victor replied with resignation, accepting the end of their affair with surprising ease. "I guess this is goodbye," he wrote. "Take care." As I read their emails, a sense of triumph washed over me. The affair was over, and Claire was mine again. Or so she thought. Little did she know, the final act of my plan was just beginning. Claire's affair with Victor was over, but the aftermath loomed over her like a storm cloud. She came home the evening after ending things with him, her face pale, her movements tense. She avoided my gaze during dinner, her usual chatter replaced by a heavy silence. I didn't press her, though inwardly I was calculating my next move. The cracks in her composure were clear. Her guilt, her loss, and the weight of her betrayal were beginning to consume her. In the days that followed, Claire's behavior shifted. She seemed both relieved and burdened, as though breaking off the affair had lifted one weight but replaced it with another. I often found her staring into space, her eyes distant, as if she were replaying the events in her mind. At night, she would lie next to me in bed, tossing and turning, her restlessness a testament to her inner turmoil. I played the role of the concerned husband perfectly. "Is everything okay, Claire?" I would ask, my voice filled with gentle concern. She would nod, offering weak excuses about work stress or feeling unwell. I didn't push her, knowing that her guilt was already doing the work for me. Her emails to Victor had ceased, and I saw no signs of her trying to rekindle their relationship. Yet the messages she didn't send were just as revealing. She would draft replies, then delete them. "I'm sorry," one read before it was erased. Another simply said, "I miss." Before the words disappeared, replaced by the blank page of her regret. Victor, for his part, had accepted the end of their affair but not without leaving scars on Claire's life. Through my subtle interference, I had ensured that whispers of their relationship reached their shared professional circles. Clients who once adored her began to cancel contracts, citing vague reasons about conflicts of interest. Her reputation, carefully built over years, began to waver. At home, I reinforced her isolation. Invitations from friends were subtly declined. Social gatherings were kept to a minimum. I framed it as a desire to spend more time together, to reconnect as a couple. "We've been so busy," I told her one evening. "Let's just focus on us for a while." She agreed, too consumed by her own guilt and weariness to question my motives. The emotional strain on Claire grew more evident with each passing day. One evening, I found her in the kitchen, her hands gripping the counter as silent tears rolled down her face. "Claire," I said softly, stepping toward her. She turned, wiping her eyes hastily. "I'm fine," she insisted, her voice trembling. I placed a hand on her shoulder, my touch light but firm. "You don't have to carry everything alone," I said. "Whatever it is, we can face it together." She broke down then, sobbing into my chest, her words tumbling out in fragments. "I don't deserve you. I've made so many mistakes." I held her, saying nothing, letting her guilt spill over. Inside, I felt a grim satisfaction. She was crumbling under the weight of her own choices, and I didn't need to lift a finger to push her further. Despite her emotional collapse, Claire couldn't completely erase Victor from her life. He lingered like a ghost, a presence she couldn't shake. One afternoon, while she was out, I intercepted a package addressed to her. Inside was a necklace, a small card attached, for the memories. V. I didn't confront her about it. Instead, I quietly disposed of the gift, ensuring it never reached her. Later that evening, when she seemed unusually quiet, I asked, "Did something happen today?" She hesitated, then shook her head. No, nothing important. The lie was small but significant. She was trying to move on, even if part of her still clung to the past. I continued to play the part of the perfect husband, taking every opportunity to remind Claire of the life we had built together. I planned weekend getaways, cooked her favorite meals, and filled the house with little surprises. A bouquet of her favorite flowers here, a handwritten note there. Each gesture was calculated to deepen her guilt and solidify my place as the center of her world. At times, she seemed genuinely moved, her eyes softening as she looked at me. "You've been so wonderful these past few weeks," she said one evening. "I don't deserve you." I smiled, brushing her hair back gently. "We've all made mistakes, Claire," I replied. "What matters is that we move forward." Though Claire appeared to be falling back into the rhythm of our marriage, I knew better than to believe the facade. Her guilt was a double-edged sword. It tied her to me, but it also kept her tethered to the memories of her affair. I can see it in the way her eyes occasionally drifted to her phone, the hesitation in her voice when she spoke about work. She was trying to move on, but the past still held her in its grip. I bided my time, letting her believe that the worst was behind her. Every moment of her regret, every tear shed in silence, was a victory. But I wasn't done yet. The final act of my plan was approaching, and when it unfolded, Claire would understand the full weight of her betrayal. For now, I let her rest in the illusion of safety, knowing that the storm I had carefully crafted was about to break. The night began like any other. Claire came home late, citing a long meeting with a client. I greeted her warmly, her favorite wine already poured and waiting on the kitchen counter. "Tough day?" I asked, my voice calm and inviting. She nodded, clearly exhausted, and took the glass from my hand. I had spent the entire day preparing. The evidence I'd collected, the photos, emails, and detective reports, was carefully laid out in an envelope on the dining room table, along with the divorce application I'd filed earlier that day. Every detail was meticulously arranged, each piece designed to strip away any defense she might muster. After dinner, I suggested we sit in the living room, just the two of us. She agreed, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath my composed exterior. I brought the envelope with me, placing it on the coffee table as I settled into the chair across from her. She didn't notice it at first, too busy recounting her day and sipping her wine. I let her finish, her voice filling the room with mundane details about a client's indecision over floral arrangements. When she finally paused, I leaned forward, my eyes meeting hers. "Claire," I said, my tone steady but firm. "We need to talk." Her expression shifted, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. "About what?" she asked, setting her glass down. I reached for the envelope, sliding it across the table toward her. "About this." She hesitated, her hands hovering over the envelope as if sensing the weight of its contents. Finally, she opened it, her fingers trembling as she pulled out the photos of her and Victor, at the cafe, at the hotel, and finally at the lake house. Her face drained of color as she flipped through them, each image a blow to the fragile narrative she had built around her guilt. I don't understand," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I said nothing, letting the evidence speak for itself. Next came the emails, printed and highlighted, every sweet nothing and secret rendezvous laid bare. Her hands shook as she read, her breathing growing shallow. When she reached the divorce application, her composure shattered. "Ethan, please," she began, tears streaming down her face. "I can explain." "No," I interrupted, my voice cold and unwavering. "You don't need to explain. I know everything." She stared at me, her eyes wide with panic. "But we've been doing so well. I thought we were moving past this." Her voice broke, her words tumbling out in desperation. "I ended it with Victor. I chose you, Ethan. Doesn't that mean anything?" I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "You didn't choose me, Claire. You chose convenience. You chose to protect your image, your comfort. But you already made your real choice when you decided to betray me." Her sobs grew louder, her hands clutching the envelope as if it could somehow shield her from the consequences of her actions. I waited for her to catch her breath before delivering the final blow. "There's more," I said, pulling out another document, a letter addressed to Victor's wife, Camila. "I've already sent this, along with the evidence, to his wife. She deserves to know the truth, just like I did." Her mouth opened in horror, but no words came out. I continued, my voice steady. "And since you seem to think this was just about us, I've also sent a letter to your sister, explaining why I can't stay in this marriage anymore. She deserves to know why her brother-in-law is walking away." Claire collapsed onto the sofa, her sobs turning into wails of anguish. "You've been so kind these past few weeks," she cried. "I thought you still loved me. I thought we had a chance." I stood towering over her, my voice cutting through her grief like a blade. "That's exactly why I did it, Claire. I wanted you to feel what I felt. To believe you had everything, only to lose it all. You took away my trust, my peace, my love. And now, I'm taking back my dignity." She reached for me, her hands trembling, her voice pleading. "Please, Ethan. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me." I stepped back, shaking my head. "It's too late for that. No one dishonors me with impunity." With that, I placed a copy of the Cask of Amontillado on the table, the passage about retribution highlighted for her to see. As I left the room, her cries echoed behind me, a haunting reminder of the life we had built and the betrayal that had torn it apart. I didn't look back. The door to our home, and our marriage, closed behind me with finality. I walked into the night, the cool air washing over me, and for the first time in months, I felt free. Claire had made her choices, and I had made mine. The game was over, and I had won. The morning after I walked away from Claire, the house was eerily quiet. I had spent the night in a hotel, intentionally choosing one far from home, and returned only to collect my belongings. As I stepped into what was once our shared sanctuary, I was struck by how much it still felt like hers. Our photos on the walls, her perfume lingering in the air, and the faint remnants of a life we had built together. But that life was gone now, shattered by her choices and sealed by mine. I didn't speak to Claire again after that night, but through mutual acquaintances, I learned of her struggles. The evidence I sent to her sister, Hannah, and Victor's wife, Camila, had the intended effect. Hannah, once her confidant, was furious and distanced herself, telling anyone who would listen about Claire's betrayal. "How could you betray Ethan?" she reportedly asked during their last conversation. "He didn't deserve this." Victor's wife, Camila, wasted no time. Armed with the evidence, she filed for divorce and demanded a significant share of his assets, including the lake house where so many of their trysts had taken place. Victor predictably tried to downplay the affair, but the photographs and emails spoke louder than his excuses. Their split became a topic of gossip among our social circle, and Claire's name was inevitably tied to the scandal. Professionally, Claire's reputation took a hit. Word spread about her personal life, and clients began pulling out of contracts, unwilling to associate their brands with the drama surrounding her. Her once thriving business began to crumble, and she struggled to find new clients willing to take a chance on her. For me, life became about rebuilding. The divorce, finalized swiftly thanks to the overwhelming evidence, gave me closure, but also left me with a lingering sense of emptiness. I took time off from work, traveling to places I had always dreamed of visiting but never made time for. The beaches of Santorini, the mountains of Patagonia, and the bustling streets of Tokyo became my escape, each destination a reminder that life existed beyond the pain Claire had caused. During these travels, I found myself reflecting on the choices I had made, not just Claire's betrayal, but my response to it. I felt no guilt for my actions. Everything I did was calculated, necessary. Yet I couldn't ignore the emotional toll it had taken on me. Revenge, no matter how justified, came at a cost. I had won, but at what price? Months after the divorce, Claire attempted to reach out. She sent a handwritten letter delivered to my office, begging for forgiveness. I was stupid, she wrote. I made the worst mistake of my life, and I'll never stop regretting it. Please, Ethan, give me a chance to make things right. I read the letter twice before placing it in my desk drawer. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Forgiveness wasn't something I could offer, not now and maybe not ever. As the months turned into a year, I began to rebuild my life in earnest. I reconnected with old friends, strengthened my relationship with my family, and even explored the possibility of dating again. At first, the idea of opening my heart to someone felt impossible, but with time, I realized that not every relationship was doomed to fail. Slowly, cautiously, I allowed myself to hope again. One evening, while attending a gallery opening with a colleague, I met Emma, an art curator with a sharp wit and an infectious laugh. We struck up a conversation about the exhibit, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark. Over the next few months, Emma and I grew closer, her warmth and sincerity a stark contrast to the lies and betrayal I had endured with Claire. She knew about my past, at least the parts one chose to share, and never pushed for more than I was ready to give. With her, I found a sense of peace I hadn't realized I was searching for. Looking back, I couldn't deny the satisfaction I felt in executing my plan, in reclaiming my dignity and exposing the truth. But I also recognized the cost of holding on to anger. The weeks I spent dismantling Claire's life were empowering in the moment but left me emotionally drained. It wasn't until I let go of the need for revenge that I truly began to heal. Claire's betrayal taught me the fragility of trust, but it also showed me the strength I didn't know I possessed. I had faced the darkest parts of my marriage, my emotions, and myself, and emerged on the other side. Life, I realized, wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about how you responded to it, how you rebuilt after everything fell apart. As I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a quiet sense of closure. The chapter with Claire was over, and while it had been marked by betrayal and heartbreak, it had also led me to a place of clarity and renewal. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe in the possibility of happiness again. The past was behind me, and the future, though uncertain, felt like a blank canvas waiting to be painted.